Hello class, in this video I'll give an introduction to documentary films, and the lecture will be short and simple, and we'll watch some movies after that. So what is a documentary film? Here's a detailed description about what is it. So basically the key component is the aspect of reality, right? Primarily for the purpose of instruction, education, or maintaining a historical record. So basically, the reality is a key component of a documentary film. Here are the 6 types of documentary films: the poetic, the expository, the observational, the participatory, the reflexive, and performative documentaries. And next, I will explain you one by one what exactly each type of documentary films is about, and what is the style or characteristic of their narratives. The first type is poetic documentaries. So just like the name, poetic documentaries are very loose with the narratives, right? They are very unconventional and experimental in form and content. So the key component of this type of documentary films is they are creating a feeling rather than a truth. Okay. This type of film is first seen in the 1920s. They focus on experiences, images, and showing the audience the world through a different set of eyes. Okay, so just remember the key component of it. You are creating a feeling rather than a truth. And the narratives is not that important in this type of film. The second type of documentaries, the expository documentaries, which is like the name. It is like a expository essay, which is narrative based, right? And so expository documentaries are probably the closest to what most people consider a documentary. It has a sharp contrast to poetics, and it has a very detailed narration. Okay, here's an example of this type of documentary, City of Gold. So in this film, the director introduced the city where he grew up and how this city became popular and why people left. Okay, so let me show you the first part of the film.
This was my hometown, and my father's town before me. It's a quiet place, a few stores, a restaurant, 3, maybe 400 people, hard workers, most of them. On the main street, the old men sit on the porch of the hotel in the sunshine, and they talk about the old days, the good old days. The park is always full of kids. After a rain, there are always plenty of puddles to sail boats in.
The third type of documentaries is the observational documentaries, and they are exactly what they sound like. They aim to simply observe the world around them. Portable film equipment is very commonly used in this type of documentaries, and it makes you feel like it is a news report. And for example, the film I put in the screen, the director is following the president enter the meeting room and document their conversations. Okay, so basically this style attempts to give voice to all sides of an issue, but give audience first-hand access to some of the subject's most important and often private moment. In the observational documentaries, you feel that we all are just the observers, and the director is just the recording and document the event. He's not included in the film, and he does not affect any of the narrative in the film. Okay.
The President has called Robert Kennedy to confer on Alabama and civil rights. Across the United States, pressures are rising for the President to speak out for racial equality as a moral issue. But a strong speech could cost the President Southern support for new civil rights legislation he would like to have.
Okay, let's get started now.
The President must decide whether or not to speak out anyway in a nationwide TV address.
Next question, which we take up now, Mr. President, whether you're going to make a nationwide TV address in connection with sending up the message.
I didn't think so. It just really depends on whether we have something trouble on the university, then I would. But otherwise, I didn't think that we would at this point.
I think it'd be helpful. I think it's a reason to do it. I think you could talk about the legislation and talk about employment and talk about education to do it for.
And the fourth type of documentaries, the participatory documentaries. Pay attention about the name participatory, right? Like participate in an event, participate for something. So these type of documentaries, it will have the elements of the observational and expository. Okay, so it will observe an event and it will have a narrative like expository documentaries. However, this film, it will include the filmmaker within the narrative. It can be just as minor as a filmmaker's voice being heard behind the camera or the filmmaker fully show up in the film. Okay, so the key component of this type of documentaries is that the filmmaker will directly influence the major action of the narratives. Okay, so here's the example of this type of documentaries. Sherman's March, This Is Pat. Okay, so I'll show you a short paragraph of it.
In 1864, during the American Civil War, Union General William T. Sherman began his famous March to the Sea. With an army of 60,000 men, he swept into the South, destroying Atlanta, Georgia, Columbia, South Carolina, and dozens of smaller towns. His troops plundered homes, destroyed livestock, burned buildings, and left a path of destruction 60 miles wide and 700 miles long, before finally forcing a Confederate surrender in North Carolina. Sherman's campaign marked the first time in modern history that total warfare had been waged on a primarily civilian population, and traces of the scars he left on the South can still be found.
Great. Do you want to do it once more? Just
Do it all, yeah.
2 years ago, I was about to begin shooting a documentary film on the lingering effects of Sherman's march on the South. I'm from the South, and all through my childhood, I heard stories about how Sherman had devastated the South. My aunt even keeps a sofa in her attic, which is punctured by sword holes put there by Sherman's soldiers as they searched for hidden valuables. She says she'll never allow the holes to be sewn up. Anyway, I'd just gotten a grant to make my film, and I stopped off in New York from Boston, where I live, to stay for a few days with the woman I'd been seeing. But when I arrived, she told me she'd just decided to go back to her former boyfriend. We argued, and then I left, and went to stay alone in a friend's studio loft, which happened to be vacant at the time.
So for the participatory documentaries, even though the filmmaker are included in the film, but the main subject of the film is about the other subject, the other character in the film. So the attempts to explore an outside subject rather than the filmmaker themselves. Okay, so now the fifth documentaries, which is the reflexive documentary. Just like the name, it is the director's reflection on something. It is like you write a reflection paper, however, you just make it to a film, or you write a diary, but instead you write the diary, you make a film about it. So this type of documentaries is similar to the participatory documentaries because they often include a filmmaker within the film. However, the main difference is this type of film, it makes no attempt to explore an outside subject. Is mainly focused on the director themselves, the filmmaker themselves, and how they feel about something and the act of how they make the film.
I've got two main type of coffee experiences. There's the quickie, I suppose, before I go to work. It can be anything from crap instant to just anyone who is serving coffee. I'm completely indiscriminate in the morning. But on days like this when I'm not working, I do like a better quality of coffee, something that I can linger over. I've got a pile of crap magazines I can read through, my own book, or if I do some letter writing, and I can just enjoy the experience of being in a cafe. This place looks clean, it looks modern. There's a lovely lingering smell of coffee and I think notes of sweet pastries, which is always very nice. And I like this bench where I can look out on the world. It's somewhere where I'm comfortable, I can have a certain degree of solitude or personal space, and I can just sit and linger and think and watch the world. I think you can tell a good barista by how much time that they labour. If they seem sort of awkward or a little bit hesitant with the process as well, you can tell that that coffee may not be good, as opposed to somebody who actually quickly gets in there, sorts it out, and knows exactly what you want. I'm looking for a good, strong coffee aroma. I'm looking for something that is very different from what I make at home, which is invariably quite crap coffee. And I'm looking for something that's a little bit better than the quick and easy coffees I have before I go to work. Something that I can linger over and enjoy the flavour. It's a lovely latte. It's got a good coffee base. Its texture's beautiful and the temperature's right. I'm enjoying drinking it, but it's not burning off the top of my tongue. This is a very important ritual. I do like frothy milk, and I do like spending a long time scooping up all the froth while I'm reading, and that way my coffee cools a little bit so I can enjoy the rest of it once I've eaten all the froth. This is something I don't have time to do when I'm working. It's a meditative act. I'd go mad without it. I would. You're laughing, but I would.
Okay. The sixth one, which is performative documentaries, is just like the name. It's like a performance. So it is more experimental and use a combination of styles. It can be either comedy or music, film, or action even, or any other type of documentaries. So it has a combination of styles that use to share an emotional response to the world. And in this type of documentaries, the director often use personal stories as a way to construct the social truth without having an argument. Okay, so here's the example, Roger and Me, in 1989. So let me just screen the trailer of it and you will get more sense about what is performative. So just remember the keyword is more experimental. It can use a combination of all the styles from other documentaries. And the main focus is to construct a social truth.
Hi, I'm Michael Moore. In my hometown of Flint, Michigan, General Motors closed the factories and put 30,000 people out of work. To raise their spirits, I made this movie.
Fire Roger Smith!
And went off to find GM Chairman Roger Smith to get some answers. Boy, was he hard to get to.
We're going to have to ask you to leave the club.
You want me to call Roger Smith?
Let's all blend this.
Call General Motors. I really don't know.
On the sidewalk.
I don't think we've met.
Do you have an appointment?
Mr. Smith is not in.
I don't understand.
Would you mind leaving?
So while looking for Roger, I got to know some of the people in my hometown a bit better. like Deputy Fred.
I treat a person the way I would like to be treated. Sheriff's Department.
And I met a neighbor or two.
I was color analyzed by someone in the IMS line, who are the people who taught me to do colors, and I've discovered that I am another season.
Talked to a PR guy at GM.
Because a guy is an automobile executive does not make him inhuman. I've talked to enough of them, I know what their concerns are.
I met some celebrities.
Well, I was born here in Flint, but I don't know anything about it.
And kept trying to find Roger. Roger wasn't talking, but the critics wouldn't keep quiet.
Roger and Me, selected as one of the year's 10 best by the New York Times. Judith Crist, Siskel and Ebert.
This guy, out.
The New York Post, Cosmopolitan Magazine, Gannett News Service, the Seattle Times, the Baltimore Sun, Jeffrey Lyons Sneak Previews, the Toronto Globe and Mail, Rolling Stone, and more.
So Roger, if you're out there, listen to the critics. See this movie. Thousands have. You'll enjoy it. After all, I made you a star.